Now I saw a video the other day where Rinehart Racing were talking about their slip-ons and what you should and shouldn't do. And in that video they said this.
I know there's a lot of people out there talking about torque cones, lollipops, all kinds of inserts that you can put into your exhaust that supposedly will do some great things. But honestly, we are very much opposed to that. Adding things to the exhaust pipe can be detrimental to the performance that we've designed into it. It can also hurt the sound of the bike, and it's going to possibly lead to something that's going to break or cause a failure, and you don't want that, right?
So after watching that video, I started to wonder, am I damaging my Rinehart slip-ons? Or worse still, my engine? So I thought it might be time I took the slip-ons off and had a bit of a look inside and rethink the lollipops I've fit inside my Rinehart slip-ons. After removing the baffles out of the slip-ons and looking down the inside, I was quite pleased with what I saw actually. The inside the slip-on, or the inside the baffles, is starting to get a bit of a coating on it. And you know, if it was running rich, I'd expect it to look very black and moist and wet. And if it was running lean, I'd expect it to look whitish in appearance, the coating. And to my eye, it's got a nice brown, very even coating, and it looks like the engine's running pretty well spot on in terms of fueling. But I did still wonder if maybe I might have jumped the gun with the lollipops and didn't give the slip-ons a good enough chance to see what they were really like. In case you haven't been following along with previous videos, I installed the slip-ons because I did notice a dip in power when I put the Rineharts on, and I got a lot of decel popping and almost like backfiring. It was that loud from the pipes. Now the lollipops did restore that bottom end dip in power, and certainly quietened down the decel popping, which was great. But I have noticed over the past few weeks that the mufflers do seem to be getting quieter, and I reckon it's just that build-up of carbon and material inside the pipes, which is really helping to settle them in and yeah, just calm them down a bit, because they were very loud and very boisterous when I first put them on. So I decided what I might do is remove the lollipops, run around with the slip-ons just as they are from the factory, other than the wadding, the packing I've put in to quieten them down, and just give it a few weeks and see if the ECU will, you know, retune and just pick up that dip in power. Now, why I don't like that dip in power is because it's at about 2,500 RPM. I reckon if you graphed it on a dyno, you would see it just the curve would just dip out around 2.5. Why that's significant to me is because this Indian Chief produces its peak torque at 2,900. So where I'm used to it sort of really hitting its peak torque at 2.9, I'm feeling this flat spot, and I'm sort of I'm accelerating. It's picking up all right, and then it hits about 2.5 and just sort of, you know, flattens out, and then it starts to pick up again. And it doesn't really seem to me to get back to where it was with the stock system in terms of torque, or when I had the lollipops installed. I did take it for a ride and I did feel the same thing, but it wasn't as bad as I remembered, so that's a good sign. The decel popping was a bit louder, but it wasn't as bad as I remembered, so I reckon that coating inside the mufflers and inside the baffles is really helping to settle everything down. The ECU and the Chief does a bit of an update every time you stop the motorcycle after you've been for a ride. So you shut it off, and in that period is where it sort of looks at the mapping and what it's picked up in terms of air fuel from the O2 sensors in the exhaust, and just tweaks the map a little bit. It can do it to a certain degree, but you know, it can't do big changes. If you put an air cleaner and muffler on, for instance, that's probably going to be out of the scope of what the ECU can do, just in fine tuning. But I'm hoping that after a few weeks of riding that it's going to just sort of pick up that, I guess it's running lean at that spot where it's just sort of flattening out, and I just hope that it's going to just recognise that and hopefully tweak the mapping in the ECU to pick that up. It's going to be an interesting experiment to see how it all goes, so if you're not subscribed, keep an eye on the channel and subscribe, and make sure you're there for the updates. Now, if it turns out that that flat spot is still there after a few weeks, then that tells me that you need to remap the ECU with the Rinehart slip-ons. So it's also going to be interesting to see how that fares over time. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.